You are listening to a Difference for One podcast, episode number 39.
I'm Michelle.
I'm Nicole.
I'm Cherise.
And I'm Cami.
We are the English sisters.
We come together to share life-changing methods of improvement through a variety of topics.
We hope that above all, these discussions will help you feel that Jesus Christ is making a difference for you, the one. And we also hope that our podcast will inspire you to find simple ways that you can make a difference for one.
Hello everyone, this is Cherise. This week we had some technical issues, so I'm going to apologize right now for the poor sound quality. Hopefully you will be able to get past the imperfections and understand the message we are sharing with you today. With the new year just around the corner, I have a special episode for you that hopefully will prepare you and maybe give you some ideas for your New Year's resolution coming up in 2021.
We'll be back after this quick break with a message from our sponsors.
Today I have a special guest with me. She is my very dear friend whom I love to laugh with so much, Kylee Rich. She is a personal trainer or fitness coach. Welcome, Kylee.
Hey, thanks, Cherise. I'm so excited to be on here with you.
We would like to have a conversation with you guys today about the importance of health and fitness and why fitness coaches are pertinent to your individual success. So, Kylee, will you tell us more about that?
Absolutely, Cherise. The reason that I became a personal trainer was actually because I have 3 girls, and being a girl myself, I know exactly how hard it is to have positive body image, and growing up and being a teenager and all of that stuff, life just kind of gets in the way. And so one of the reasons that I decided to become a personal trainer was to know and understand the body and how it works. And the perks of being a personal trainer is I know a little bit more, and I know how to kind of work it against itself.
So tell us more about what you just said, that you use it against itself. You use the body against itself. What do you mean by that?
So what I mean by using it against itself is our body works in a specific way. So think of yourself as a baby. You are learning how to breathe and walk and talk and all of these things at the same time. So what happens is we start to get old and we get lazy. So basically what I do is I take your brain and I retrain it back to the basic, most simple ways, which helps you engage all of your muscles. So not only am I retraining your brain to know exactly what your body needs to do, but I'm also going to take your weaknesses and I'm going to use them against you. And your weaknesses are going to become strengths. So for example, if you have, let's say you have a very weak butt, which that's common in a lot of people, your feet are going to pull more out, okay?
And when you say pull out, do you mean the front of the toes pulling out or the back of the heels pulling out? Can you clarify that for us?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So your toes are going to point outwards. So instead of pointing straight ahead of your body, they're going to point out towards where your arms would be. So technically this makes your butt muscle smaller because it's always constricted, which actually makes it weaker than the rest of your body because it's not being worked as much. So we would just train your body to move your toes inwards.
And train your body, meaning doing specific exercises for those weak muscles, correct?
Correct.
So actually, for me, in 2017, I broke my tailbone, and that was so painful. I remember in the moment thinking I would rather experience natural childbirth all over again than break my tailbone. It was so painful and so awful. And it took quite a bit of time for the bone to heal itself. And once it was happy again, like I had some x-rays and it was all back in place, I was ready to do my regular exercise that I was doing before, which was yoga. I loved doing yoga and I felt very strong as I was able to work up to certain yoga stances and exercises. And I wanted to get back at that because that was my normal routine before I broke my tailbone. Even though the bone was healed, every time I stood up or sat down or had my legs in practically any position, I had this huge pain constantly shooting down the back of my leg. And I knew that was my sciatic nerve. And it was really frustrating because there was no position I could find that would make that pain go away. And I didn't know how to fix it. And so I went to all these different people like chiropractors and physical therapists, and they they did everything that they knew how to do to help me, and I still couldn't get the pain to go away, and it was super frustrating. In 2018, I met Kylee, and I learned that she was a personal trainer, and I started doing workouts that she planned and coordinated for me and for my specific body to do. And I actually don't know when the pain went away because I was so focused on what those exercises were and how I just wanted to make sure that I was doing them correctly and in the right position and good form. But I think within a month, my pain was completely gone. I don't know the exact day of when it happened, but I do remember realizing one day that I didn't feel pain at all that entire day. Like normally you don't miss something until it's gone, and it takes you a minute to realize that it's actually gone. And that was just so incredibly mind-blowing to me. Like my focus wasn't necessarily to get ripped or anything like that. My focus was to just get my pain to go away. So what did you do, Kylee? Like how did that happen? Why did my sciatic pain go away?
That's a very valid question. You're going to hear this a lot with people. They don't necessarily understand what's going on in their body, or they have this pain and they just can't figure it out. And then when they start working out, all of a sudden that pain kind of just goes away. So what happens, Cherise, especially in your circumstance, what I did was I used your body against itself. So I took all of what I knew. I knew you were having sciatic pain. I knew you were having all of these troubles in your lower back and down your legs and everything like that. And what I did was I started working those muscles that are around that. So what happens is when you have an accident or an injury or you give birth or anything like that, that kind of throws you out of your fitness game, which is just life in general. Even having a desk job can throw you out of your fitness game. Okay. So for you, for your example, what I did was when you had your tailbone accident and you broke your tailbone, when it healed, the muscles around it were weakened. For one, because you're being super careful with it. You're trying to let it heal. You're not doing your normal stuff. And then for two, the bones can heal and pinch nerves. And that happens so often. And in fact, a lot of times what happens when we feel pain, it's our nerves sensing to it. It's our nerves, being pinched or not being in the right position. So basically what I did was I used those muscles that were weakened and I started building them. And it wasn't me. I can say that it was me, but it was really you. All I did was teach you how to use those muscles. And I showed you different movements in order to build those muscles around that. Once you started building those muscles actually help hold your bones in place. So once your bones are in the actual place that they're meant to be, then you're not going to have as much pinching going on. And now that's not always the case because there are some cases where your bones are actually out and you've got to go to a chiropractor or, you have to go to a doctor. There's always going to be reasons or things that you need extra help for. I'm not saying that I'm a cure-all and I don't claim to be a doctor by all means, but definitely using those muscles and utilizing your body to its fullest potential, that's going to help you in the long run in every situation.
So for that experience for me, I realized that it wasn't just exercises that I could find on the internet and like, oh yeah, I could do this and I could do 20 of them and that'll burn this many calories and I can, and trying to figure out my own health plan based off of what other people are doing. I realized that it was vitally important for me to do specific exercises that my body needed and not comparing my body to somebody else's body because they have their own weaknesses and strengths and I have my own weaknesses and strengths. And I just found that so fascinating and mind-opening for me to not judge myself. Like you said earlier, that you kind of help people with their mind as well as their body to rehabilitate, right? That it helped my mind heal with self-confidence and understanding that it's okay to be different and it's okay to work on specific things. It doesn't make you better or worse than anybody else, if that makes sense.
It totally makes sense. That's 100% the thing with it. You're building not just your body, but your mindset. It's a combination of your mind, your body, your breathing, your spirit even. It combines everything. And when you look at it as a whole, there's so much there. And there's so much there that I still feel like I don't even know. And I know that I don't know everything because I'm constantly learning. But there's so much more that I know now than when I was working out by myself before I become a trainer. And now that I know that, it helps my workouts so much more.
That's awesome. I love that. So what is your specific emphasis? Like, do certain clients appeal to you more than others, or do you prefer to just work on everybody? What's your go-to? What's your favorite group to work on?
That's an excellent question, Cherise. A lot of trainers actually have specialties. And one of my specialties, one of my favorites, absolute favorites, is working with moms pre and postnatal. I love working with the women who are pregnant, trying to get pregnant, who have had babies, all of that. And a little bit of why is because our bodies are incredible. Like, no discredit to the men because they are phenomenal, but just think of the process that our bodies go through and the trauma that our bodies go through to give life to these precious little infants, and it bounces back so quickly. So that's one reason that I chose to go with that route. Another is actually I had an interesting experience after I had my first baby. Now at this time I wasn't a personal trainer. I was just kind of working out on my own, and I did not know how to rehabilitate my body. I didn't know what my body needed. My whole birthing situation was pretty much horrible.
Which is pretty common with your first child. You kind of are learning everything for that time around.
Yeah, absolutely. And it didn't help that I had a midwife that wasn't there for me. So I really was just doing it all on my own, and I thought I knew everything, and I did not. It was a very humbling moment for me. But after I had her, I immediately wanted to get back into the gym instantly. And so I started working out like I normally would, doing everything that I had before, because I was huge into CrossFit and heavy lifting. I love weights. I love lifting weights. But because I didn't rehabilitate my body correctly, I actually have a type of prolapse that is a rectocele. It's something that I constantly work on and constantly am trying to still rebuild, and I've improved it a lot, but unfortunately it's one that doesn't go away fast, especially with the damage that I did before I knew all of this. I didn't even become a personal trainer until after I had had my second baby. So not only did I have that damage there after my firstborn, but I also added another child to it, and it just destroyed me. And so with that, all I was doing was more damage to my body. So that's one reason that I am so adamant and so passionate about working with these ladies who have just had babies or who are just getting pregnant. And even before, knowing and understanding your body, because I didn't know what was going on, and I can guarantee a lot of people don't know what's going on. When I mention a pelvic floor, people are like, what? Did you know what a pelvic floor is?
I know that it has something to do with doing your Kegels.
Absolutely. So I have a client right now. I love her to death. She actually just had a baby. Her baby is 2 months old. But when I first mentioned Kegels, she was like, what? And she's had 6 babies. And I was like, yeah, why don't you do a little bit of research on it? And this is kind of how you do it. This is kind of what it'll feel like. And she was like, I have never heard of that before. So a lot of people don't understand and don't know, especially when you just don't really know what to look for. I had always heard my midwife talk about Kegels before, and I was like, yeah, okay, whatever, but once I really started reading about it and understanding it and learning about it, I was like, whoa, this is a game changer.
So why was it so exciting for you? Like, what was that spark that you were like, oh my gosh, that's a game changer? Like, what happened?
Okay, so in order to explain this the way that I want to, I'm going to take you back to your baby years, okay? I talked a little bit about being an infant earlier and how we knew everything, we were learning everything. So when you're a baby, you are learning the basic movements. But if you think about that baby, think of how strong their core is. And when I say core, I'm not just talking about their ab muscles. I'm talking about from their whole torso, from their neck to their legs. Think of how strong that tiny little body is, okay? So when they are working on that and learning like when to use the bathroom, when they're potty training, or when they are trying to figure out how to move their limbs and all of those things, okay? All of those things stem from your core, okay, which is your whole trunk area. Your chest wraps into your abs, your back rubs into your abs run into your back, your abs run down into your pelvic floor, and your pelvic floor is into your back. I mean, all of it is just intertwined, and it is so fascinating.
It almost sounds like it's all self-supportive, like this area is supporting that area and that area is supporting this area. It's so cool.
And that's exactly what it's doing. So in order to build one muscle, you have to build other muscles. So like spot training is not a thing. I mean, it can be, but it's really not a thing because there's always counteractive muscles. Okay, so you're not just building a bicep. You also have a tricep movement with a downward as you're focusing on the fall of the bicep curl, or your forearm is working. It's also wrapped into your shoulder. So all of these muscles are getting hit, and while they might not be the sole target, they're all getting hit. So coming back to that baby, you're learning everything, and everything is so strong, and it knows how to work together. It knows exactly what it needs to do. As you start getting older, you know, your mind is connected solely with that muscle. It's just all in one. So as we get older, we actually start to forget everything, which sounds silly because that was like our whole everything growing up, right? But we start adding in school and work and the hustle and bustle of every day. And our body just kind of is like, okay, we're going to do the bare minimum of like what we need to do in order to survive, right? So you stop learning that, oh, hey, in order to sit up straight, I need to engage my core as well as my back and tuck my pelvis, squeeze my butt. Like there's all of these muscles that are involved in just sitting that we forget about. And we're just like slumping here, right? How many of you are sitting here currently slumped over?
Me.
Stop that. But it's those things, those little things that, you know, we don't even think about. We just don't think about as human beings because it's on our back burner. We have so many other things going on in our lives that it's on our complete back burner.
That is so fascinating. And I love that you talked a little bit extra about the pelvic floor and the core. Speaking of the core and postpartum mothers, there are a lot of women out there who have this struggle when their stomach gets so big from having that baby in there, their abdomen muscles separate, and that's called diastasis recti. Did I say it right?
Close. It's called Diastasis Recti. You were really close. It was a good try. I'll give it to you there. It's a hard word. So there's actually two things that it could be. It could be diastasis recti. And to get that determined, I would suggest either going to someone who specifically specializes in pre and postnatal or going to a doctor and getting that examined, because you could also have the possibility of having a hernia. And they are treated completely different. Unfortunately, hernias, they take surgery, and there's not much that you can do because once those insides have protruded outwards, there's not anything you can do for the muscle in order to get it back. You have to have surgery for that. And as a personal trainer, you have to be very, very careful with those because they are so sensitive. But if you have diastasis recti, it's actually easy to fix if you know how. A lot of mothers have diastasis recti and they go through their whole entire life thinking, oh, it's fine. I'll just do a plank and make my muscles stronger, right? Have you ever thought that before?
Yeah, sometimes.
Absolutely. And a lot of people do. They're like, oh, I have this gap in my stomach. My muscles just need to be stronger.
We should clarify what a diastasis recti is. It's when the abdomen muscles have moved to the side. There's this significant gap between each side, right?
Correct, yes. So a normal gap is anywhere from a pinky width to an index finger width. That's about a normal gap. What we're talking about here for a diastasis recti is where you can fit 2, 3, 4 fingers in. I've even had some people be able to fit a whole fist in between their abdomen muscles. And when we're talking like fist-wise, we're talking we need lots of rehabilitation, and we need to also be really super careful because at that time we also have the possibility of a hernia. With this diastasis recti, one of the things that you want to avoid, the most important thing, if you take absolutely nothing else out of this, is that you don't work your abdomen out as a whole, okay? Those muscles are weak, yes, but if you start doing planks and you activate both sides of your abdomen at the same time, what you're doing is you're building those muscles and making them tighter in the same position that they're currently in, separated. What you need to do instead of that is you need to work them one at a time, one side at a time, by doing less invasive movements. So if you do like leg lifts, instead of doing double leg lifts, because that works both sides at the same time, you're going to keep one at an angled position on the ground, and then you're going to lift the other one. So you want to keep one foot on the ground while you can lift the other one. And then anytime you roll in and out of bed or you're laying down on the ground, you should be rolling to one side and pushing yourself up with your arms, trying to use as less abs as possible. Because when you activate that core together and you have diastasis recti, you're only building it the way that it is. And you have a higher possibility of a hernia happening.
And not being able to fix the muscles and bring them back in because you're building them separated, correct?
Correct, but also incorrect, because you can rehabilitate them. It would just take longer. It just takes more work, because if you build them separate, I mean, they're going to be strong, and it's going to take more work to get them untrained to where they're at. Because every muscle is trained. I mean, if you think about it, walking down the street, you don't have to think about it, right? It's just like when we're babies. That's what we're doing. We're training our brains to know, okay, I have to move this leg in order to propel myself forward. It becomes habit, which is why we get lazy and we forget. And we start to slouch and we start to slump and we start to, walk pigeon-toed or walk eagle-toed.
Walk like a ballerina.
Oh, there we go. That's a better word for it. Walk like a ballerina.
So there was something we talked about just a little bit earlier, how you not only help your clients physically, but you also help them mentally. In episode 2 of our podcast, we have what we call the thought cycle. And in the thought cycle, you have a situation and you have your thought, which leads to your emotion, which leads to your effort, which leads to your outcome. And I have experienced that everything that we do in our life always stems from our thoughts and what we're doing. In what ways have you helped your clients mentally and spiritually and emotionally, not just physically in the gym?
If anyone here is different than me, kudos to you. Because for me, even as a trainer, sometimes I lay in bed and I'm like, oh, this is so warm. I don't want to leave. I don't want to get up and go to the gym and make my muscles hurt. I don't want to do that. No one in their right mind would want to, right? But one of my biggest things is accountability, which is a lot of what I'm here for. I'm here for accountability, which is why it's so great to have a trainer, not just because we know your body, but also because we're going to be your biggest hype person. We're going to be there to cheer you on. You have one more rep and it's so hard and you feel like quitting, and we're going to be there to push you. Come on, girl, get that up. Come on, man, you got this. Push one more time. Come on, come on, come on. We're going to be there. We are your hype people. So that helps a lot mentally. Another thing that I like to do is I like to take your goals, because when you start working out, everyone has goals. And most of the time, this is what I hear. So my goal is I'd like to lose like 15, 20 pounds. Do you think that's possible? I'm like, yeah, absolutely, it's possible. But I don't want that to be your goal. And then they just kind of look at me like, excuse me, you can't decide what my goal is. And then I come in with this. Let me explain why I don't want that to be your goal. I don't want that to be your goal because if you have a set goal that you can work towards, like let's say you want to do a push-up in a week, a full strict push-up on your toes, on your hands, arms by your side, all the way down, all the way up. You want to be able to do that in a week. We can make that happen. You want to be able to do a full pull-up in a month. We can make that happen, okay? That's something that I can make sure happens if you're working with me. But let's say you want your goal and you're adamant about this. You want your goal to be 15 pounds. You want to lose 15 pounds. We start building muscle. 1 pound of muscle is a lot smaller than 1 pound of fat, so it looks different on your body, but it also weighs different because when you start losing that fat and you're replacing it with muscle, so you have 1 pound of fat, which is almost the size of your torso. You're replacing that with, like, let's say 6 pounds of muscle fits in that 1 pound of fat. So you lost a pound. Great! But you gained 6 in its place.
Okay, I'm glad that you brought this up because this is actually something that you worked with me. We passed the tone phase and turned into the build muscle phase, and I was no longer losing weight. I was building muscle and I was gaining weight and I was gaining weight. And I am currently at the weight I was when I started my workouts with you in 2018. And in my brain, for a while, I was like, no, we don't want this. We don't want to go back to this because this isn't pretty. I don't want to be super, super heavy. But actually, it is pretty. I mean, okay, I am pretty.
You are pretty.
But in the mirror, this number on the scale right now looks very different than the same number on the scale looked 2 years ago. It looks completely different. So my goal wasn't to lose a certain amount of weight. It was to look toned and was just to try to look normal. What my version in my brain was, I'm not some skinny model in a 2-piece, but I'm also not, I don't know, I've had kids. But for me, I am amazed at how my appearance looks different, even though my weight is the exact same as it was when I started. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. So we call that skinny fat. And while you're skinny, like you fit in a size 0, but all you have on your bones is fat instead of muscle. That's called skinny fat. If you can't lift 45 pounds, that's called skinny fat, okay? And that's exactly what you were experiencing.
Yeah, before I had my first kid, I was at my lowest weight, like even lower than when I got married. And I looked at pictures of back then and I was exactly that. I had no muscle. I had no strength at all. I couldn't do things and I felt like, oh, it's just because I'm a girl. But that's something that Kylee has totally changed for me. Like, you being a girl does not mean anything. Like, you should be intimidated if you ever meet Kylee because she can lift things that are, like, her abilities are inhuman.
Thank you, Cherise. I actually find that a compliment. So what you noticed was the skinny fat, but when you start building muscle, women especially, are so afraid of lifting weights because they don't want to look like the men that they see, right? You go to the gym and you see all these muscle heads and they're walking around like, ooh, and they lift weights and they make the noises and all of this stuff, right? But what happens is when women actually start building muscle and start lifting weights, what happens is their body starts to build this lean, beautiful, sculpted muscle because we don't have all of the testosterone in our bodies, okay? All that testosterone is what actually builds the muscle in the men, okay? So when we build muscle, it looks so much different than when men build muscle. Now, there are the exceptions of like those bodybuilders who look insane and you're like, oh, I don't want to do that. I don't want to look like her, It's okay because her body is beautiful. You don't have to go to the extreme that she does. She's probably eating the bare minimum of calories, like cutting out all carbs and just hard stuff. And that's great for her. But for you, you don't need to do that. You just need to build the muscle, feel the beauty of having the muscle, and look tight and toned and gorgeous while owning that you have that muscle.
And while we're on this topic, something I've noticed or recognized recently is that the fact that women have a higher percentage of fat than men is important because it helps in the childbearing years. I've actually started mentally telling myself, this is a good thing for my body, not excess. I'm not trying to get rid of it either. I'm not trying to let myself go, but I am appreciating the fat that I do have on my body so that it can sustain life whenever I become pregnant again, which I think is so masterfully planned. Like, I think our bodies are so amazing for that.
Absolutely. And a fun fact that a lot of people don't know is the reason that women have such a hard time getting down to their weight before they were married or their weight when they were in high school. You know, you hear all of these like dreams that girls want to just be the same weight that they were in high school. It's not physically possible. I mean, there are those very few women who are, but they do a lot of work and effort to get there. But the reason that it's not possible is because actually as we get older, our body fat percentage actually grows. For example, men, when they're in their like 20s and 30s, they should have like, I think it's 7 to 8% body fat, which is like their ideal whatevers. But ours is like in the 20s and 30s. How crazy and how unfair is that?
Yeah.
But it's beautifully designed because we carry those infants in our body and they need that. They need the insulation that it brings. They need the cushion that it brings. They need all of this. And another thing that I just actually thought about was working out while you're pregnant. So one reason that our bodies are so unique and so awesome is because a lot of women are so scared to work out while they're pregnant. But our bodies are made for having babies. How cool! Do you know what that means? That means that we get to still do the things that we need to do in order to have those babies. So we can still work out. We're not going to hurt that baby. It's protected. We can still do all of these things. We can still lift if we're careful and we know what we're doing. We can still lift. We can still do all of these things like run, walk, stair climb. Anything that you can think of at the gym, you could do if you know what you're doing. You know, as always, there are exceptions to those people who can't. And we feel for you, sisters. We feel for you. But don't get into your head at all because you are strong and your body was made for this. And if that's what you need to do in order to have that baby, in order to bring that baby into the world, then you do exactly what the doctor tells you to. And as always, consult a doctor before you start any type of new fitness program or anything like that. And that's actually why we see that. We hear that all the time. Consult a doctor or a physician. And people go, why? That's dumb. I'm not going to go to a doctor just for that. It is to know that your body is safe and willing and able because there are going to be some things that make it different.
I love that message and that idea that just because we're pregnant doesn't mean our lives are over and that the baby is now in charge of everything or whatever. Like we can still be who we are no matter what's going on in our lives because our bodies are completely capable of doing that, especially with proper care and correct form. Very, very important so that you don't have any injuries. But a spiritual thought I wanted to end on because I love where we've gotten to in this conversation. I thought of Elizabeth, who is the cousin to Mary in the New Testament. And you can read this in Luke chapter 1. As the angel is talking to Mary, he says, "And behold, thy cousin Elizabeth, she hath conceived a son in her old age. And this is the 6th month with her, who was called barren. For with God nothing shall be impossible. And Mary said, Behold, the handmaid of the Lord, be it unto me according to thy word. And then the angel departed from her." And I love that the angel telling her the experience of her cousin who is so old, there's no way that she could get pregnant. She probably already experienced menopause, is now pregnant. And that is proof to you that because of the Holy Spirit coming unto you, you will be pregnant as well. So then while Mary was pregnant, she went to go visit her cousin Elizabeth, and they were both pregnant at the same time together. And I love their statements in their reunion. And so Mary, in verse 40 of Luke chapter 1, it says, "She entered into the house of Zacharias and saluted Elizabeth. And it came to pass that when Elizabeth heard the salutation of Mary, the babe leapt in her womb. And Elizabeth was filled with the Holy Ghost. And she spake out with a loud voice and said, Blessed art thou, speaking to Mary, among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb. And whence is this to me that the mother of my Lord should come to me? For lo, as soon as the voice of thy salutation sounded in mine ears, the babe leapt in my womb for joy. And blessed is she that believed, for there shall be a performance of those things which were told her from the Lord. And Mary said, My soul doth magnify magnify the Lord, and my spirit hath rejoiced in God, my Savior. And I love that their faith created these experiences for them, such rare, miraculous pregnancies for them. And they trusted the Lord continuously. It didn't stop once they conceived. It didn't stop once their children were born. They continued to be faithful in the covenants that they made and trusting the Lord.
So they trusted in the Lord and they continued with their faith. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they didn't struggle. That doesn't necessarily mean that it wasn't hard for them. They had faith. They knew that what they were doing was what needed to be done. They loved what was happening, but it's okay to feel down sometimes too, because there are still hard moments. Though you may have struggled with infertility like Elizabeth did, you still may have the hardest pregnancy ever, but it is still worth it. Don't ever discredit yourself, and don't ever get down on yourself for feeling like you failed because all you wanted was to get pregnant and now you are, and it's painful, or it's hard, or it's not exactly as you planned it to be. The Lord works in mysterious ways, and it's not always the way that we think it's gonna be.
Exactly. And I think that their greeting to each other, because of the trials they experienced, were that much more joyful. I think that the trials are necessary in order to experience the indescribable feelings of joy and peace. That sense of peace and reassurance that everything was going exactly the way that the Lord wanted it to, and they finally got to the point where they realized that it was all perfect and all right. And I just love that. I love that so much. Thank you, Kylee. Thank you for coming on with me today.
We hope that you guys have enjoyed. And if you have any questions or any concerns, please feel free to contact me or Cherise or anyone and just ask. And we will try to get you the answers that you need in order to understand your body and understand what's going on. And anything that you need, just let us know.
Exactly, because everyone's journeys are so different, and so we can't cover every single topic in this episode, but I know that a lot of these ones, the topics that we did discuss, are more common and were the ones that I just felt strongly that we needed to talk about today. So thank you for chatting with me and coming on this podcast with me. I really enjoy your presence and everything about you, and we will talk to you guys next time.
If you like this podcast, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. If it resonates with you, the greatest compliment you could give is to share it with a friend who might benefit from it as well. Check out A Difference for One on Instagram for additional content. And if you have any questions, comments, a topic you'd like to hear about, or if you'd be interested in a free mini coaching session, send an email to adifferenceforone@gmail.com.